Hello, good people of Stand Upia, and welcome to today's episode. It is Monday, and I am very happy to have you joining me. We've got Dr. Rob Davidson from Paging America with a very important conversation, answering all my questions about healthcare, health policy, RFK, and whether or not a tick bite should require an emergency room visit. Lots to come with Dr. Rob Davidson, and our conversation begins today's show at 25 minutes into today's show. Hope you had a great weekend. I've got your clips and headlines coming up. Did anything happen this weekend? It's kind of a slow news weekend, right? Except for until on last Saturday night, this past Saturday night, at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, that there's a guy who tried to shoot everybody, and he himself was tackled immediately, and apparently had his shirt removed, and then they ripped off his mask, and it was J.D. Vance. Somebody made that AI. I hate AI videos, and I won't share them, but I do see them and sometimes laugh at them, and someone made that video where they took his mask off at the end of Scooby-Doo, which apparently some people think is like life is like a Scooby-Doo episode. And it's not. And it's not like a movie either. And I probably am going to annoy and upset some people here today when I lay out some of my views. But I do want to make myself as accessible as possible to debating and arguing with anybody who believes that the Trump administration somehow orchestrated this or let it happen or look the other way, or this was any kind of false flag operation, because I have been working to debunk conspiracy theories for as long as I have been anywhere near a microphone with a radio or podcast or television or any audience at all. And I'm going to work real hard to make sure that we don't become what we've been criticizing, whether it be filled with hate, filled with doubt, filled with a kind of questioning that makes us crazy. And so I want to try to do that today by laying out how I see what happened, the motivations for it, lack of motivations for it, the fact that violence foments violence, the fact that Donald Trump is the most hated man in the world. So, of course, lots of people want to kill him. And when he does die, eventually, however he dies, there is going to be a party worldwide. So it will never be surprising that there are so many people that have tried or that want to end his life. Same as any president, but nobody's ever been quite like this guy. Anyway, instead of getting mad at me or instead of being angry at me because you might disagree with the way I see this, I invite you to join me in conversation. You could do it privately. We could do it publicly. We could do it publicly. Maybe I will take 5 or 6 folks, because there's a lot of folks that I think listen to the show that have a lot of questions, and we can meet on a Zoom. I'll bring a friend maybe, so we could talk it out. I talked it out a lot with a lot of people yesterday. A lot of you I directly contacted and went back and forth with and had very thoughtful conversations, and nobody got hurt, and it was good. I always love talking to you. So if anybody is willing to do that before I lay this out, I just want you to know, any questions you have, I'll find a way to do my best to answer them. It's very important, I think, to me, and should be to you, that I do my best to have as much credibility and trust as I can to earn yours. That's the whole deal these days, guys. You got to find people that you trust, independent sources that you trust. You got to question what their incentives are. What are their motivations? If you know me, you know mine. If you've been listening to me, then you know what they are. And I don't think I need to spell them out. I don't think anybody thinks that I'm getting super rich over here. I don't think anybody thinks I'm being paid by some shadowy source. I think that I've proven the way I conduct myself throughout my career, and so hopefully I can maintain my credibility through this yet another crazy moment in our lifetime. And conspiracy theories abound. They are very dangerous, pernicious, insidious, and our country is in a wash in them, and that's why I would like to debunk them and answer any of your questions, and have my questions answered too, because of course I have them, and that's it. That's my opening. It all started for me on 9/11, being in the city and witnessing that, and then smelling it for the next 3 months and dealing with everything around that, and then having to deal with all of the conspiracy theories, after Sandy Hook, having to deal with all of those conspiracy theories, the conspiracy theories that we'd have had to deal with around the scientific consensus around climate change and the fact that it's very easy to understand that burning fossil fuels creates greenhouse gases that get trapped and destroy the climate and the planet. Having to deal with conspiracy theories on vaccines, the greatest miracle in public health since running drinking water. I mean, this stuff is dangerous. And when we stop believing in anything, it becomes a bad thing for you and your mental health. I saw a lot of people yesterday saying, I don't know what is real anymore. I hear you. I feel that way sometimes as well, but that's a really important reason for us to stay together, open each other's minds, hear and listen to each other, and do our best to support each other in any number of ways, including with resources and thoughts and expertise and credibility and a lot more. All right, now that's my second part of my opening, I guess. I'm still talking. Though I did just think of the fact that the reason I mentioned Sandy Hook, longtime listeners will remember, but maybe even some of you don't recall, I certainly do, that I was implicated in page 9 million of that. Some of the conspiracy theorists around Sandy Hook implicated me somehow in supporting something because a man named Gene Rosen, a sweet man, an angel of a man from Newtown, Connecticut, used to listen to the show. And on the day of the shooting, a bunch of kids, he sheltered a bunch of kids who had escaped from the school. I believe they were on their bus. I can't remember the details of it. Anyway, he called me. He called me at home. We talked. He contacted me through email. We talked on the phone. He said he didn't know who to talk to and trust when it came to media. He spoke to the Associated Press and several other outlets, said the same thing to them as he did me. But somehow he was implicated, and then as a result of him being a listener and talking to me on the show after it all happened, somehow I was implicated. So I've seen these conspiracy theories be constructed, and I have then also seen with my own eyes, living in New York on 9/11, and of course talking to Gene shortly after Sandy Hook, and being someone who behaves in many ways, or tries to these days, like a journalist, and has for a long time, have a code of ethics, and most importantly, a relationship with you. And so hopefully that is what we can continue to have. Anybody who wants access to me, you get it. You want to talk on the phone about any of these things, let's set it up. And that's going to continue to be my commitment to paid subscribers of the show, especially, and anybody else who really insists on having this question, or you want to criticize me, you want to ask me something, let's do it. All right, well, we'll set up a hangout and talk about it. If there's more that you specifically want to discuss with this, so maybe we don't have to belabor it as much on our regular Thursday night hangout. We can have some fun, because there is fun to be had still in life. Don't let them get you. Don't let them get you. Okay. All right. Let's get to the headlines other than everything surrounding Saturday night's White House Correspondents' Dinner and the attempted whatever. I mean, I get it. It almost seems like it's too much to say, call it an attempted assassination. But it is. I mean, the guy had clearly made a plan. He had a manifesto. He was very animated and radicalized into his mission. He brought knives and guns, and he got tackled pretty quickly. It wasn't a great plan, but it was an attempt, I guess. Actually, let me just read this, and then I'll do the rest of the headlines that are very important. But Joan Westenberg is someone I follow on Threads. She's got a pretty good following, bigger than mine. She writes about philosophy and productivity and publishes a weekly column on technology and all of it. And here's what she posted. I keep seeing people crashing out over false flag, Reichstag fire theories. But have you considered the simplest explanation equals more likely? By the way, that's the whole Occam's razor theory. She goes on and says, there are bungled, very public attempts on Trump's life because, number one, America is a country full of people who can't access mental health healthcare. Number 2, America has a corresponding gun violence problem. 3, guns are ridiculously easy to acquire. 4, the Trump administration are incompetent when it comes to enacting security measures. You don't need a conspiracy. Remember, this administration leaks like a fucking sieve. They're incapable of keeping anything under wraps. These are the guys who planned a military strike in a group chat and added a journalist to it. There is 0% chance they could manufacture a false shooting and not brag about it to someone. Yes, perfectly said. Very perfectly said. The only thing I would add, which is basically what she already said, is they can't keep secrets. He can't keep secrets. They're not able to keep secrets. And I've legitimately lost track of how many fake false flag Reichstag fires that we were supposed to have had at this point. And add social media and talk radio and conspiracy theorists saying all kinds of things about anybody, and you're going to convince a few people to take up arms. If you think someone's a pedophile and they live in your neighborhood, if you heard that over and over on the radio, that guy's a pedophile, somebody might do something. They're well intended. Maybe they want to stop that person from attacking children. But what if that person wasn't doing that? That's what happens here. People act on any number of things that they've heard on the radio or on social media repeated over and over. So I would just add that to the mix, the brew here. We'll talk more about this theory and specifically others, principles of it, and what works and what doesn't. And I'll play a few things related to it coming up. But let me tell you that there are other things that are going on in the world that matter a lot, including, for example, over the weekend, a Virginia Circuit Court ruled that Virginia's redistricting is legal, overturning a lower court judge who is this right-wing nutjob who will do anything for Republicans in Virginia. So the circuit court ruled, and now the redistricting will net Democrats 4 seats in Congress. I should say it's going to be heard by Virginia's Supreme Court and then likely approved again, because apparently they stick to the law. So that's the prediction from experts. And this effort will net Democrats 4 seats in Congress. So that's huge news, and it's great news. And there's more. Let's just look at some of the news headlines from Friday night before the weekend began, because another federal appeals court ruled that Schittler does not have the authority to suspend asylum access for migrants. It's a really important point, a crucial piece of the president's immigration enforcement agenda. So a 3-judge panel from the U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia found the presidency does not afford him the power to circumvent the federal immigration laws that allow for migrants to apply for asylum at the border. That is big good news. That is another loss. That is another point as to why they can't pull off an assassination attempt. They can't even pull off this. They can't get anything done. Courts constantly, not anything, but they're constantly reversing their insanity. The European Union on Thursday approved a $90 billion loan package to help Ukraine meet its economic and military needs for 2 years after oil began flowing through a key pipeline to Hungary and Slovakia, ending months of a political deadlock. That is because of their election there as well. That is also big news. A U.S. Army Special Forces soldier who helped capture Nicolas Maduro in Venezuela has now been charged with using the classified information to bet on Polymarket, which is one of these prediction marketplaces. And so he allegedly made like $400,000. I might have mentioned that on the Friday news segment. Let's see. Related note, Republican Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna and Jimmy Patronis of Florida, they're both calling on the president to pardon that Special Forces soldier. So, well, good luck. Let's see. What else do I have? Steve Bannon over at MS Now, Maddow blog writes, accountability for corrupt former presidents is apparently still a possibility in some democracies. Quote, South Korean prosecutors Friday requested a 30-year prison term for ousted President Yoon Suk Yeol over allegations that he deliberately tried to escalate tensions with North Korea in 2024 by ordering drone flights over Pyongyang as he sought to create justifiable conditions for martial law at home. Remember that? Wow. So maybe there is some accountability to be had for a world leader in other countries. Maybe are someday. More positive news. Republicans and Democrats in Congress condemned a plan by Schittler to send Afghans who aided the American military campaign against the Taliban to the Democratic Republic of Congo. That is a very, very good news. I was happy to see and hear that and report it to you now. Also this, a case worth watching. 2 government watchdogs are suing the commander-in-chief and the White House on Friday over internal guidance that instructed that some text messages exchanged between officials could be deleted, despite a law generally mandating the preservation of presidential records. That's an important case. Here's another one. Billionaire crypto mogul Justin Sun, he invested tens of millions of dollars into Trump's family's various crypto ventures. Well, now he's suing those same ventures, one of the Trump family crypto firms, to get his money back. And two big law partners leaving one of the biggest law firms, Paul Weiss, the latest blow to the prominent New York law firm that reached a widely criticized deal with our dear leader last year, according to some reporting from the New York Times. Wonder if Paul Weiss, if he had to do over again, would he have struck that deal, is the question to ask. Just a few other stories that I wanted to mention. And now let's get to the clips that I brought for you on today's show. Got a bunch, obviously, related to the shooter at the Correspondents' Dinner and a few others. But let's start with that. I think the clip that went most viral that I saw yesterday was Dana Bash asking Republican leader, Democrat Jamie Raskin, if he needs to tone down the rhetoric, what with all the political violence out there. Well, guess what? Jamie Raskin doesn't take the bait. Here it is.
And you have, as many of your fellow Democrats, have used some heated rhetoric against the president. And do you think twice about that when something like this happens?
What rhetoric do you have in mind?
Just talking about some of the fact that he, is terrible for this country and so on and so forth. I understand that that's your Democratic right, but overall, do you
I
have a
no
responsibility?
Personal problem with Donald Trump at all. I mean, I talk about the policies of this administration, the authoritarianism like we saw on display in Minneapolis, where two of our citizens were gunned down in the streets simply for exercising their First Amendment rights. Renee Good, Alex Preddy, and others have, died in custody. I'm talking about policies. I don't personalize it, and I certainly have never called the press the enemy of the people. I think the press are the people's best friend, and that's why it's written right there into the First Amendment. We need the press to be a vigilant watchdog against every level of government, federal, state, local, all of it.
You're not going to get an argument from me on that.
Okay, well, I've already said a bit of my piece on the whole theory around conspiracies and false flag. I read something from somebody else. Let's just put it to bed with Tim Wise. Does he have enough credibility? So brilliant, such a well thought out piece of commentary that he posted on Instagram and Threads. So take a listen to Tim's thoughts on this, and he answers a lot of questions that people have. It's so well done. Here he is.
Hey, y'all. Wanted to take a second and chime in on this White House Correspondents' Dinner and all the false flag conspiracy chatter. Look, I get it. My gut reaction watching the news last night was that it had to be total bullshit. After all, Trump lies so often about everything that you really can't blame folks for thinking that it had to be made up. But here's the thing. It's really not shocking that there weren't metal detectors at every entrance into the building. It's a working hotel, y'all, with regular guests. They obviously are not going to send every guest in the hotel through a metal detector going in and out of the front doors. And please, can we stop with the Caroline Leavitt bullshit about how right before the event she said shots will be fired tonight? She is not going to let that slip if she somehow was in on the deal. Some of y'all are sounding pretty stupid right now. The funny thing is, if Donald Trump was going to set this up, surely he would have done it for something more important than his stupid ballroom. I mean, it's not even a smart plot. At least Butler would have made sense because it would boost his chances in the election. He didn't use last night as an opportunity to say this is why we need to crush the left or why I need a third term. He just wanted to talk about his ballroom. It was a layup for those other things, and he completely missed it. Most importantly, though, if this had been a false flag, they would have killed the guy, right? I mean, there's no way they let him live, giving him a chance to disrupt whatever narrative the government would want to spin if it had been fake. Conspiracy theories, I realize, are easier than simply accepting that sometimes actions produce reactions. The fact is, people are angry at this man and his administration, and that is why some people might lash out against him. It doesn't make it right, but it does make it predictable, especially if you add things like untreated mental illness into the mix, which might be in play here, or easy access to firearms, which obviously was. Bad things don't require conspiracies. They're the product of systems. Political assassinations or assassination attempts flow from anger over political decisions. Violent attacks against the government or its symbolic centers of power, like what happened on 9/11, don't require inside job conspiracies. They just required U.S. forces imposing themselves in Muslim lands and posting up in Saudi Arabia after the Gulf War, thereby pissing off folks who then decide later to lash out. Again, none of it makes it okay, but it makes it predictable. The key is not whether the event was staged. It likely wasn't. The question is, what will they try and do now? That's what we should be worried about, because whatever happened is not a reason to crack down on dissent. It's not a reason to increase surveillance of people who oppose the president or criticize capitalism or white Christian nationalism. Now, I'm certainly not saying that people never conspire to do things, but we're all too quick to jump to that conclusion, and it's dangerous because it renders systemic discourse impossible while we go hunting the Wizard of Oz behind the curtain, pulling the strings, rarely finding him, but certain he's out there somewhere.
Yes. Mic drop. Any questions? That's all I have to add to Tim's commentary there. He answers a lot of things that questions people have been asking around this and about it. So I just thought that was brilliant, as always, from Tim. Go subscribe and follow him on Instagram and Threads, where he's been posting those types of pieces that I'll share all of them. Yeah, all know I love Tim. All right, moving on. How about this clip? This is from MS Now. A reporter went and talked to fishermen in Cortez, Florida, who also supported Donald Trump for president, and they're none too happy about the price of diesel. Take a listen.
We're tearing America apart right now. The people, make America great again. We're tearing America apart right now.
Fishermen here in Cortez, Florida are pissed off with the president who many of them voted for, and they're angry because of skyrocketing diesel prices.
I'm really scratching my head because I voted Republican, and most of us in the fishing industry did. And we're not seeing the positives come out of it.
Now, before the war in Iran, gas coming from this pump in Cortez was going for $3.29 per gallon. Now, gas from this pump is closer to $5 a gallon. And for boats like this one, Linnea, which is about to go out on a 2-week sword fishing trip, it needs 4,600 gallons of diesel. And with prices like these, that's making business unsustainable. All of that on top of the fact that these fishermen are also having to contend with President Trump's erratic tariff policy.
When the tariffs initially went into effect, there was a huge jump in all of our tackle and supplies. And even though the tariff percentages were rolled back a little bit, our suppliers never rolled back their prices.
Now, the manager of this family-run fishing company here in Cortez, Karen Bell, tells me that the tariffs and the diesel prices mean she's going to have to raise the price of fish, and that cost is ultimately going to be incurred by the customers.
All right, well, that's enough. His delivery is bothering me, and so is that music. Was it bothering you too? Anyway, there were more people in the fishing industry that he talked to. It was good reporting. It was just the way he was talking made me want to stop that clip, and so I did. But there is more to it. Okay, well, next clip. How about this? It's John Oliver on Kash Patel on Last Week Tonight on HBO.
Kash Patel, a man who always looks like he just got caught using Starbucks Wi-Fi to look at porn, filed a bullshit $250 million defamation lawsuit against The Atlantic. They'd run a story alleging his bouts of excessive drinking and unexplained absences from work have alarmed colleagues and could potentially represent a national security vulnerability. And when asked about those allegations, he came out swinging.
Can you say definitively that you have not been intoxicated or absent during your tenure as FBI director?
I can say unequivocally that I never listen to the fake news mafia. And as when they get louder, it just means I'm doing my job. This FBI director has been on the job twice as many days as every director before me. What that means is I've taken half as many days off as those before me. What that means is I've taken a third less vacation than those before me. I've never been intoxicated on the job, and that is why we filed a $250 million defamation lawsuit. And any one of you that wants to participate, bring it on. I'll see you in court.
Oh, yes, the surefire sign that someone hasn't been drinking, sudden uncontrolled belligerence. And look, I have personally never been accused of getting white girl wasted at a place called the Poodle Room in Las Vegas, but even I know if someone asks, have you been drunk or absent as FBI director, to start with no, rather than vomiting out an incoherent string of fractions.
Well, darn it all, I got a little distracted this morning putting the show together. It didn't get as many headlines as clips as I would like to, but I think we got some good stuff in there and a good start. So very happy to have Rob Davidson join me. That's where I will get to right now. Rob is an emergency room doctor. He is also part of, or the executive director of, the Committee to Protect Healthcare, committeetoprotect.org. They've got an awesome Substack with lots of subscribers. Page in America, some really good, great contributors over at Page in America. Rob has served patients in his community in rural West Michigan emergency room for decades, 2 decades, and he's just an advocate for state and national policies to expand healthcare coverage to all patients. Great guy. Love talking to him. You can watch this on YouTube or Substack, and I hope you'll go subscribe to their Substack and support the Committee to Protect Healthcare. Let's do it. All right, Dr. Rob Davidson joins me, and I love talking to you, and everybody always loves when you are here answering all of our questions. Thank you very much for being here in late April. How are you?
Doing okay. It's good to be with you too, Pete. Always fun to come on and chat, and maybe not always the most fun topics, but it's great catching up.
Yeah, healthcare, health policy, really important, affects everybody, and super relatable, which is why everybody should be subscribed to your Substack and everything that you're doing, and all of that is linked in the show notes, folks. Everything with Rob and everything else. It's late April there in Michigan, where you're an ER doctor. I just got to ask you this off the top. Everybody goes, I read the statistic that lots of people are going to the ER for tick bites. And I do everything I can to keep people outside, keep them connected to nature. I know the seriousness of the blood-borne diseases, viruses that they spread. It's a serious issue, but I don't know. I think it's a waste of your time as the physician and the ER, and more importantly, the patient's time and money to go for a tick bite. You get a tick, you see it, you pull it out. It doesn't matter if you get the whole head out, you get it out. You'll be fine. The disease is in the body, and then if the bite, forms a bullseye, you keep your eye on it, you draw a circle around it, you send the tick into the state lab, make sure it doesn't have a disease, and then you've done your due diligence. Tell me what I'm missing. Why would I need to go to the ER? Why is everybody going to the ER for tick bites?
Well, I think people are rightfully concerned, particularly about Lyme disease, and that's prevalent around here. I saw more cases of Lyme disease last year, probably the last 2 years, than I had in the previous 10 years. So it's definitely rising. So I think people understandably are concerned about it. I do think certain people, if it's a high enough risk bite, even before you see a rash, if it's been on there, the tick has been on there more than 24 hours, which sometimes you don't know, right? You just find this thing on you like on a Tuesday and you're out hiking on a Saturday or Sunday. So I don't want to discourage people from coming in. Certainly, if you can manage at home and then, connect with your own physician. I guess the problem in America in 2026, a lot of people don't have doctors, right? A lot of people can't get in to see them. So I will say, as an ER doc's been doing this so long, we're happy to see you. You might have to wait a little longer because, you're not going to be taking over someone with chest pain or belly pain or something like that. But yeah, get the tick out. That's the thing you got to do. And then you're getting to see somebody at some point if you have concerns, whether it's the rash, fever, chills, symptoms like that, or just you think, hey, I might be at risk. I need to make sure I don't need to be on some antibiotics. All
right. That's good advice, as always, from Dr. Rob. So somebody must ask you once a day, and so I just want to get it out of the way. Do you watch The Pit?
So I will tell you, big reveal. I just finished season 1. I've been told
I just
so many
started.
People I have to watch. So I just finished it.
I just started I'm on episode 6 of season 1, and it's all because I had access on a plane. Now I gotta get.
Yeah, that's how I started it too. Same thing. I saw 3 episodes on the plane. I'm like, shit. Now I got to go subscribe.
All right. Well, what do you got to say? I guess the big question is, how realistic is that show seemingly to the ER that you work in?
The medicine is extremely realistic to medicine, right? I have not seen anything, and I trust the people. Joe Sachs is a producer and a writer. He's an ER doc. I know this podcast / CME I listen to, MRAP, Emergency Medicine Reviews and Perspectives. They're part of the show, and there were a ton of ER docs get our continuing education on a weekly or monthly basis. So it is factual medicine. I think the challenges, and each episode is an hour, right? So this is a 12-hour shift, but spoiler alert, it's a 15-episode season, so their shift goes long for various reasons. But the number of highly critical, but also extremely rare medical problems that present in this shift, if anyone had this shift on a regular basis, you would have to just walk out and say, I'm done. I'm out. Like, I mean, they had, like just the deliveries in the ER, which are extremely uncommon, but then a delivery.
Oh, spoiler alert. I haven't gotten to.
Well, that's okay. These, I mean, so yeah, the medicine is there. I like the drama. I like the characters. But man, that concentration of zebras and really strange things you hardly ever see. Like they're things that someone in 25 years of doing emergency medicine will probably see at some point, just not all in one day. That would be crazy. But
got it. All right. That's a great review. It makes a lot of sense. And are the people in the ERs that you worked in, are they all as attractive?
No, they're more attractive than me. But yeah, we're just working folks.
Come on, Rob. You're like a 7 or an 8. You're an easy 7, maybe an 8. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I've got a face made for podcasts.
Stop it. I appreciate you joining me today and to talk about all these other issues as well that we've got to get to. RFK was on the Hill this week, so of course it's a great week to talk to you. He was testifying in front of a House committee and a Senate committee as well. And all kinds of questions come up. I wonder just in general when you watch, I don't know if you watch the entirety of any of those hearings, but if you see the disparity in questions or the diversity of questions, the number of questions, if you're satisfied with the kind of questions being asked, with the focus that's being put, it's easy to score political points on this guy for any number of reasons. And I think that you should. I think you should slam dunk on him and make a fool of him because he is one. But also, I then watched Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's questions to him, and she focused really specifically on healthcare companies and got him to agree that they're ripping off the American people, which I thought was really consequential. Maybe it's a little more boring. Maybe it's not as sexy, but she's a policy person. She asks health policy questions, which is certainly in everybody's interest. So how do you feel about the generality of the questions from the Democrats, much less Republicans, to the Health and Human Services Secretary and man made of butter?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Like questioning by AOC, I think also in the Senate Health Committee, Senator Warren questioned him about Trump RX and a particular drug that was on there for $200 you could get at Costco for like $12. And getting him to acknowledge, he never quite admits it, right? Getting him to have to defend Trump's math of a 600% decrease, which is not possible, right? It would be the company paying you $1,000 for this $200 drug. Getting him to say, well, the president calculates percentages differently, right? At least so people can see the absolute ridiculousness and the degree to which this guy and really the whole cabinet will debase themselves just to satisfy their leader. I think that's important, right? But I think it's important on the policy stuff. Senator Kaine in their committee, kind of highlighted that there were hospitals in Virginia that are closing, and 3 of them cited their big, beautiful bill, right? The Reconciliation Act, the $1 trillion cuts to Medicaid that haven't even happened yet. But hospitals have budgets. They have to plan out years in advance. And they're citing like that's a reason. I think it's important to get him to admit on these important issues that aren't as sexy as like raccoon penises and whale heads, but like really matter to people and affect their lives.
By the way, my new band, Raccoon Penises and Whale Heads, is playing tomorrow night for the first time.
And I just realized I just said raccoon penises are sexy, and it is not how that was intended, by the way.
It's fine. It was kind of a double. I mean, sexy can mean interesting too. So
there you go. Yeah.
All right. So let's get specific with some of the things that were asked in this hearing. I'll let you pick. Do you think, the most important question? I'm getting water while you answer. I can hear, and more importantly, everybody else can watch and hear. I'll be back in 10 seconds while you answer what you think was the most important thing that was asked, or issue, or set of issues.
Yeah, I think it's really important. I'll go back to Senator Warren's questioning about Trump RX, because they've cut trillions of dollars from Medicaid in the Reconciliation Act last year. They allowed the ACA subsidies to expire, right, forcing millions of people to not have insurance or to pay way too much for their insurance. So they let these things happen, and they were told by their pollster, hey, healthcare is a big issue. People don't like it. You guys are going to get slaughtered in the midterms. Do something about it. So Trump rolled out this bullshit website, Trump RX, and they've made deals on a handful of drugs with drug companies, trade drugs, to say this is the cheapest you can get this thing, right? One IVF drug, one diabetes drug, maybe a COPD drug, and then this drug for acid reflux that Senator Warren brought up that is $200 on Trump RX and $12 at Costco. So we realize this is it's just all complete BS, right? It is a marketing tool for them to try to say, look, we're doing something about healthcare so they can not get slaughtered in the midterms. And it's not going to work. So that one just stood out to me as being such an important thing to highlight and to make sure people understand.
It's weird because on its face, the policy sounds like a good idea to create an online marketplace that the government owns and operates and regulates that allows people to price out drugs. It sounds like a good idea, especially if the government is subsidizing those drugs. But I heard this New York Times deep dive into Trump RX, and I don't know if you heard that episode, but it's good journalism on all of the things, which is probably where some of that questioning came from. And it's absolutely true. You get some at more discounted rates, but there are many that you can't. It's misleading and it's potentially a waste of time. And it's just another kind of bullshit gimmick that we saw in his private life and obviously now in the government sector. So it's not effective, but it could be, right? And
it could be if somebody who actually cared and had the interest of people in mind. You could design something, right? And if you held drug companies to task at the ridiculous profits they extract, particularly from folks in this country, right? The highest drug prices in the world by far, by orders of magnitude in a lot of cases. Yeah, if someone actually did that, that would be something worth investing in and discussing. This is not that, right? This is not that.
I got to ask you the age-old question about guns and butter, and just the fact that we're spending like $1 billion a day on this war in Iran, and only in America could you get away with starting a war of choice and then spending that kind of money on it and have that not be a primary focus every day. Because apparently we have unlimited money, and or we don't, depends who you ask. And we're going to spend it on a war as opposed to on healthcare. So you've heard a lot of different policymakers and pundits talk about what you could get for $200 billion, which I guess is a good number because that's what they're asking for this war. When you hear that with your health policy, healthcare expert, physician ears, what must you think about our society with our ability to spend that kind of money on a war of choice and what you could get for that here in healthcare?
Yeah, not even just a war of choice, a war with no real justification, or on some days with multiple reasons for having gone to war that nobody wants, that the Congress did not approve, right? All of that. And that now has created a problem with the Straits of Hormuz that didn't previously.
Made it worse.
After they ripped up the JCPOA that was dealing with Iran having nuclear weapons. So all of that. And then they put out a budget that cuts, billions and billions of dollars from healthcare across the board. Yeah, I mean, it's disgusting, right? It just tells you what drives the decision making in Washington, D.C. It's profit, and the biggest profiteers off of this government is the defense industry, right? They're proposing a $1.5 trillion budget for the Defense Department, or whatever they call it now, the Department of War. Yeah, it's pretty disgusting, pretty sad as a doc when you look at. They showed their cards when they cut the $1 trillion from Medicaid to give tax cuts to really rich people, and it just continues. Right, there's no end to this. And somewhere in there, Trump and his family have to be profiting, because I am now convinced this isn't about power. This isn't about him staying in office. This is about extracting as much money as possible for himself, his family, and the people around him, right? The people that support him.
Well, if we're going to do that, I get to weigh in, which is yes, it is absolutely about power. But I think it's probably misleading to think of it just being that, or even primarily that, because I think it obfuscates the idea that a lot of Trump supporters, and certainly Trump himself, are really motivated by revenge. And I think it's hard to admit and hard to acknowledge, but motivated by hurting other people, which is why a lot of people that are still hanging on to MAGA and Trump can't let go, because they're addicted just to liberal tears or to anybody that doesn't agree with them. And I think that's true of him. Trump has always been this isn't analysis or psychology. He's been very open about it. If you ever heard me say this in his private sector, he will spend the rest of his life trying to destroy you. And I think a lot of his motivation when he gets up is that. So that's where I split the hair.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, let's go back to vaccines and talk about what was talked about a little bit at these hearings. And then also I saw that there's which department? CDC has buried a study that said the COVID vaccines last year were extremely efficacious. Do I have that right, or was it flu? I forget which one. I think it was both. Maybe it might have been both. But
it showed in healthy adults a 50% reduction in ER visits and hospitalizations, It was due to be published in the MMWR, Morbidity and Mortality Weekly Reports. It's like the weekly publication of the CDC that doctors and health departments all look at to see like what's the lay of the land. And this is a non-controversial study. It's the same techniques, the same types of data they've used for vaccines all along, respiratory virus vaccines in particular, flu, now COVID. And this year, the CDC decided, and Jay Bhattacharya, the acting head of it, since the other guy had to leave, this year they decided that they didn't like the study design, and so they just weren't going to publish it. And just by a matter of fact, it actually showed that this vaccine in healthy adults, it did a ton, right? It kept people out of the hospital. I talked about this on our podcast this week. It's criminal. It's terrible. And it's just kind of, they start with a narrative, right? A decision about what they believe about something. And RFK Jr. has made no mistake that he does not support the mRNA vaccine for COVID-19. And, publishing data that would suggest it was actually extremely beneficial, even just to healthy adults, not to like just really sick people, as they always tried to say. That would have just been too much for him. So somehow they keep it out of the public view.
Also, you have over at pagingamerica.org, which if people aren't subscribed to your Substack over there, your organizations, is a really great resource. I love healthcare news. I check it. I read it. It's a great aggregation of a lot of really important stories. And in other healthcare news on pageamerica.org, you cite this recent poll by Politico that seems to suggest that RFK Jr.'s anti-vax crusade may be working, with 46% of respondents saying they, quote, believe facts on vaccines are still up for debate and it's damaging to enforce their uptake. And so there's a lot more to this, but does this poll support the idea that his views are now becoming commonplace and that vaccine skepticism is widespread? How do you measure such a thing?
I'm glad you brought that up, because actually we interviewed Dr. David Higgins. He's a pediatrician out in Colorado and sort of an expert on vaccines, does a lot of public communications. And he rightfully showed that this study was not done well, right? This poll was really not done well. The questions were just phrased in a way that even someone like him or someone like you or me who supports vaccines, who thinks they're helpful, would have a hard time answering some of the questions the way they pose them. And so like the vast majority of data out there about vaccines suggest 79, 85, somewhere in that range, 80 to 85, up to 90% of people still believe vaccines help, they work, they prevent disease, and they support them for themselves and their family. However, it is true, some of that has eroded, and within even the data in this polling that was skewed and probably wasn't kind of done as scientifically as it should have been, there are concerns, right? Part of the concern is we have to be talking to people wherever they are at their level, and Dr. Higgins brought this up, not trying to score political points or win an argument like, look, vaccines work, told you, or like for me, when I have parents come in and haven't vaccinated their kid and I'm worried about whooping cough or maybe even measles, like not to chastise these people, like for decisions they have made. Like every parent I've met that has a kid they didn't vaccinate loves their kid and thought they were doing what's best for their kid. They didn't do it because they wanted to hurt their kid. They did it because they're getting bad information, right? They're getting it off Facebook from Uncle Joe or a guy they went to high school with, or RFK Jr. in this case, the Secretary of HHS. And so it's really our job to educate folks, to make sure they're getting good information to help make good decisions for the kids that they're trying to protect. So, yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because I think there's a lot there, and people just grabbed onto it a little too much, suggesting there's some major shift, and likely that isn't the case.
Is there there's no one way to talk to or convince someone to vaccinate their kids in this case?
I don't think so. It kind of depends on the reasoning people have concerns, right? Some people are just concerned about the government telling them to do anything, right? So if you make it clearly, this is a choice. And here's why I would choose it. Here's why. And I tell people all the time, I use personal experience. I have 3 kids. They're all adults now. They got all the vaccines, right? They never got measles, never got whooping cough. They didn't get the baddies. And even things like, people want to say, oh, well, chickenpox, that wasn't a big deal. Well, the sickest person I've ever seen in my life was an adult who acquired chickenpox, ended up with chickenpox pneumonia, and ended up in the ICU for 4 months, because they never got chickenpox as a kid. These are important things, and we need to tell these stories and talk to people about them. I think you just have to figure out who your audience is and what their particular concerns are and address those concerns. It makes it harder to do on a mass scale, But that's why I think, people need to go in and talk to their family doc, talk to their pediatrician, talk to the doctor who's helping them decide how to care best for their families.
Going back to the pit to refer to another piece of news, refer to reproductive rights issue news that you also have at Page in America. You guys have aggregated some really important stories. And in the pit, there is a scene that plays out where a young woman is seeking an abortion, but she's a minor, and there's some real confusion about the laws there. Have you ever come up against something like that where the woman or the young woman who comes in pregnant wants an abortion and her parents deny it for her? Is that realistic? I mean, I'm sure it can happen.
I haven't personally experienced it. I have definitely talked to people who have been in these situations, and like, they're tricky. I've said this so many times, so much of medicine is not black and white, right? You can't, that's why it's so hard to legislate medical decisions for people.
It's not a tricky,
politicians and lawyers to sit and craft like language that's black and white that says, this is how this must happen. It's like, no, man, like the variety, it's across the board. The spectrum is amazing on the situations that you're presented with.
Sure. It's not tricky legally though, is it? If a minor comes in, they have to, it's different laws in different states, right?
Right. Different in different states. So depending on where you practice, in some states you need parental consent. In some states you do not. As a rule, most states, if a minor comes in and they are pregnant or they're seeking treatment for STDs, you are not obligated to give that information to parents, but you can give that information to parents. It's not against the law to do so in most states. But you just have to know where you're practicing and how that plays out.
And even if a doctor thought ethically that they should provide the abortion, they're not going to do it because it's illegal and it's not worth their career and license. And now more than ever, right? Like, that was always the case even before they overturned Roe v. Wade in several states. I mean, they're trying to extradite a doctor from California to Texas or something like that who sent mifepristone. Like, he didn't even, or she didn't even, it wasn't a surgical abortion, just sent drugs in the mail. So things have changed, I guess, along those lines. But it would always be.
Yeah, and only 8 states, I think, now have shield laws that protect physicians who do prescribe that way, and we need more of those, and we need to strengthen those, right? We can't have. We've seen a lot of states now. They're saying they're okay sending doctors and maybe patients to jail, right? In Texas, like their draconian laws. If your Uber driver thinks that you're trying to get an abortion and they were part of it, they can report you, right, and get a monetary reward and get someone prosecuted. The degree to which they'll use the law, I think, puts a lot of patients, individuals, a lot of doctors kind of looking behind their backs, looking for the prosecutors coming after them.
It is such a different paradigm state to state as a result of this confusing Supreme Court reversal of rights won, and still hard to believe. But you also cite Jessica Valeni, who writes at Abortion Every Day. That's the name of her Substack. She covers women's reproductive rights exclusively. That apparently South Carolina Republicans are intent on criminalizing all abortions, which is the point I'm making. Like, in some states, it is so much different than literally right across the border in North Carolina. From my understanding, almost the entire Southeast, it's illegal to get an abortion, from Florida up to South Carolina, is my understanding. But crazy how it's different.
And like when Roe fell, when the Dobbs decision happened in 2022, they said, well, let's leave it up to the states. The problem is they're not doing that, right? There's several ways they're trying to make mifepristone, right? The 60% of abortions now are pill abortions, and mifepristone is the most common. They're trying to make that illegal, right? The FDA is now reviewing it. Josh Hawley in Missouri, the senator, has introduced legislation to ban mifepristone. They're using bogus, what they're calling studies, but bogus papers that suggest harm from this drug, a drug that's safer than aspirin, safer than Viagra, been prescribed for 20 years. So they are trying to make it illegal or unattainable everywhere. Like, you may have a legal right to it, but if you have no means by which you can get the actual abortion, it doesn't matter if you got the right, you can't do it. So that's their new line of attack.
What's the status of, and what are you seeing with patients at your hospital in Michigan and anywhere else reading about the cuts to Medicaid and the affordability of healthcare? When are we currently seeing people being kicked off of their health insurance, or just not being able to afford their health insurance? I feel like that's not fully in force yet. they wanted to phase that out after the election.
Those Medicaid cuts really aren't happening until after the midterms. Conveniently they set that to happen.
Yeah.
The problem is the fallout of the cuts is twofold, right? One is people losing their health coverage. So that's damaging to the individual. But it's then entire hospital systems, and rural hospitals in particular, that lose a base of patients that have insurance that can pay their bills. And I have a lot more uninsured people. That's why Senator Kaine in Virginia said 3 of the hospitals that are talking about closing cited specifically that bill, right? That hasn't come into effect yet, but they got to think about what's happening 2-3 years. We talked about a case, a dialysis center in Nebraska that is closing, or that closed. I think it was in March, and an individual there who, now has to drive an hour and a half and said, well, I guess I'm just going to have to bloat and die because I can't make it to my thing, with $4 gallon gas.
God, you don't
bring it down, but
you don't think
the effects of it are happening now. The lack of insurance for people is going to really start hitting early next year.
Just want to ask you lastly, I think, about the myth of undocumented people defrauding our healthcare system, Medicaid specifically. And if it's not undocumented people, apparently it's like dead people or something. What was RFK's answer about that? But this is a long-held myth and lie that's been told by conservatives and Republicans for forever about any government program, that it's all just abused and it's filled with waste, fraud, and abuse, when in fact it's not. And it's unbelievable how much that myth has perpetuated reverberated. I mean, a lot of liberal Democrats believe it as well, whether it be with food or housing or nutrition or WIC or Medicaid or anything else, TANF. It's not remotely rife with waste, fraud, and abuse. It's just people don't understand, and everything gets demagogued, and big numbers look very bad, but when compared to a larger budget, they're really not. What do you want to say about those myths that we heard this week about undocumented people on healthcare? What? They can't even buy it, which is so stupid. I want undocumented people to have health insurance, so so I don't have to pay for them if they go to the ER.
There's only a few states where undocumented folks can get onto Medicaid rolls, and those are paid for with state funding, right? Those states have decided, those people have elected their legislatures. They cannot avail themselves to any federal programs. It is just not legal. Right. But what happens is when people want to blame the high cost of healthcare, they don't want to blame the people who are doing it. Right. It's United Healthcare, it's Cigna, it's the big insurance companies, it's big pharma that are extracting all of this profit, that are giving millions, that have thousands of lobbyists in Washington giving millions of dollars to senators and to members of Congress to keep the system going. It's Medicare Advantage with privatized Medicare and them extracting money out of that, and we're all paying for it. They can't blame those people, right? So they have to find someone to blame. And who is an easier target than a group of people that literally have no rights in this country, right? That feel under attack in this country, that are afraid to go to the hospital. They're afraid to go see a doctor now because ICE is now standing outside the hospitals or trying to get into hospitals to take people away that have done nothing other than enter this country without documentation, but then work and be a part of communities. These folks pay taxes, right? They pay payroll taxes. They pay for Medicaid and Medicare for all of us to enjoy, and yet can't be a part of that system. But I think it's just that they need a scapegoat. They need to blame somebody, and that's just an easy one, right? They can't defend themselves.
Rob, we covered so much in 28 minutes. I really appreciate it. For more, go check out pagingamerica.org, which is where I got a lot of my information and questions to talk with Rob about. They go in depth on the podcast and on the blog at their Substack. It's really well done, and you're so good. It's a public service that you're doing. I really appreciate it. Anything I didn't miss? Anything I missed? Any big stories? Any big anything else? Any anecdotes? Do you think
we didn't talk about raccoon penises too much? So that's probably a good day.
He said that he cut it off to bring it home to study it.
Wow. We have to end on that.
Who even carries a knife like that?
Never had that thought. Never had that thought. Knife carriers of America, we don't want you coming after us. It's fine. You want to carry a knife around. But if that is your intent of cutting genitalia off of roadkill.
Yeah. He's big on roadkill. He loves roadkill.
Real introspection. Yeah. I mean, I've heard of people, you find a dead deer, it looks pretty fresh, bring it home, dress it up, you can feed your family. I mean, that's a thing people do. I don't do it. People do it. But just to study, That's some weird shit. That's like, remember the kid in Toy Story who made all the little toys that came and attacked and all that? That's like Sid. That's like that's scary stuff.
Oh yeah, that tracks. I
don't want to be around that guy.
Well, nobody does. Unfortunately, he is in power. It's so hard to believe that this is the timeline that we are in. But I'm glad we're in it with you. How about that? Rob Davidson, thank you very much for joining me. Really appreciate it. All right, there goes Dr. Rob Davidson. Today I should be live around 11 o'clock with Shannon Minter, who's just been honored at Time 100. More importantly, he's the executive director of the LGBT Legal Rights Network. I forget the name of the exact organization. Shannon Minter will join me today at 11, and I'll know everything about him by that point. And then tonight, I'll be talking to my old friend, Professor Dr. Miranda Yaver. Thank you to my friend Tina Winsett for giving me a heads up. She kind of fell off my radar because I think Twitter went away and I wasn't following or something. But Miranda's really smart. She's written a new book about healthcare, and I'm very excited to talk to both of those guests live today. If you're not subscribed on YouTube or Substack, then please do, and you'll get an alert. Also be live on Facebook and Instagram, generally speaking, as well. But I need you over on YouTube and Substack. I need you to write a rating and review of this podcast over at Spotify and or Apple Podcasts. And that's it. Go support John Carroll, who writes and performs all the music, johncarroll.org. And I will talk to you later. Thanks so much, everybody. Love you. Bye-bye.
Stand up, you gotta stare the devil straight in the eye. We got to let him know it's his turn to go. See it clear and all you hear is a lie. Don't get up off of your butt, get down off of your fence. Even if it ain't a very friendly audience, well, they'll begin to listen when you start making sense. And you stand up, stand up. No need to point your rifle to defend your town. Just stand up, stand up. You know they can't deny you what you're laying down. Boy, you better stand up, stand up. Show your face of every color, yellow, black, red, and brown. She's the place where every lost child will finally be found. There's only one thing to do before we stand our ground, and that's stand up, stand up. Well, the founding fathers saw a land for all. They had to stand up, they had to stand up. They had a keen imagination for a crystal ball, drawing all the plans of stand up. But all they had to go on was the time they were in, with other causes for laws, and since they weren't even sin, they knew that change was gonna come before the change could begin. They had to stand up. All right, they had to stand up. We got to stand up. We got to look the devil square in the eye. We got to let him know it's his time to go, and make it clear when all we hear is a lie. Why you lying awake wondering where the money all went? It'll be the cost of freedom that'll go unspent. And you can see him flee the scene of that experiment if you stand up. All right, we got to speak up, we got to reach up, and raise your voice in every way you know how. Don't be toes up, you got to show up. Ain't no better time to do it but now. No need to pledge allegiance to no wanton tribe. Rise up, show obedience to the voice inside, and listen well and it'll tell you not to run and hide. It says stand up.